Hi, I'm Robert Orm, and I'll be reading you today's edition of the Fall River Herald, dated Monday, August 26th, 2024. Mix of Emotions for New Middle School by Greg Sullivan. This piece of modern architecture has more students than usual embracing the end of summer break from school. The brand spanking new $85 million Somerset Middle School was open for orientation last week, with students and families in its three grades, 6, 7, and 8, given the opportunity to tour. It was 8th graders on Tuesday, 7th graders on Wednesday, and the new kids on the block, 6th graders, on Thursday. Teachers report for work on Monday, August 26th, and students start on Wednesday, August 28th. A day and a half into the orientation, first-year principal Carrie McKinnon confirmed that the new building is helping students to shake off the back-to-school blues. I've already had students telling me that the past 2 days with orientation, she said. They're nervous about getting lost around the building, but I just assure them we're all in the same boat. But they are very excited. This marks the second time in 3 years that McKinnon has helped lead the way into a new school. She was principal when the Westport Senior Junior High School opened. She said the new Somerset Middle School is like a college campus, almost. Super nice, huge, 10 times bigger and better, said 7th grader Wes Niles. No desire to ever go in the old school again. Everybody looks very excited, said 8th grader and orientation tour guide Adriana Walters. I normally wish summer could go on. This makes it 10 times better. It's better, a lot, said 7th grader Gianna Gonzalez. 7th grader Anderson Marchand, post-tour, gave a thumbs up to the new building even as the old middle school, built in 1965, just a couple hundred yards away, stood partially demolished, the gymnasium and grade 6 wing now rubble. I liked the old school. Classes were close, Marchand said. This is a little bigger, so it's a little more of a hike. But I definitely like this more. Very grateful. My sister's in 3rd grade. She'll have this too. In the cafeteria, the start and finish for tours, Superintendent of Schools Jeffrey Schoonover happily watched students meet school. I'm really in awe about this whole thing, he said. This process started 8 years ago, and now to stand in this beautiful cafeteria right now, just seeing the kids walk by and everything, it's just a great sense of pride, excitement, just a mix of emotions, a lot of emotions. Asked about a buzz about town concerning the building's occupancy permit, Schoonover explained that the permit was obtained on Monday, August 19th, 1 work day and 3 actual days after the long-standing target date of Friday, August 16th. He said the brief delay was due to the need to install the railings on the main stairs and a few minor things. Max Walski, music teacher and band director, was clearly enthused about his new work environment. It's a breath of fresh air. The building looks beautiful. We're very excited to get the rooms together, he said. It's going to be a great time. We have a new setup with the classroom as well as connected right to the auditorium. A brand new sound system, great new seats. The first concert's going to be an exciting one. Like so many town residents, Susan Texiera had only a cursory view of the emerging new school. Her curiosity level was high. She left impressed, except with the student lockers, which she thinks are a bit small. It's absolutely gorgeous, said Texiera, who has an 8th grade son and 7th grade daughter at SMS. They did a good job with it. I didn't know what to expect, honestly. The kids deserved a new building for sure. It's a great change. Though the abandoned and disappearing old middle school was dark and dingy compared to the new building, longtime SMS physical education teacher Mike Johnson is making the switch with mixed emotions. I put a lot of hours in that gym next door, but I'm looking forward to learning the nuances of this new one, he said. I like the windows. I like how bright it is, shiny and new. Schoonover knows full well he'll hear complaints about one aspect of the new gymnasium, the seating for basketball games. It pales in comparison to the two-sided arrangement in the old gym. The new gym has bleachers on just one side. While all 8 rows extend out for assemblies, only 2 come out for basketball games. That will seat about 75 fans. Schoonover said to make room for additional fan seating, the gym would have had to be built larger, to the tune of an additional $1 million or more. The line of towering arborvitae bushes along Brayton Avenue, just north of Reed Street, was reduced for a driveway, and may be reduced again, but will not be eliminated, Schoonover said. For decades, it worked as an outfield fence for the baseball field. Work on Phase 2 of the middle school project is ongoing with the construction of athletic fields. Like Johnson and many others, Walters, while embracing the new facility, feels some nostalgia for the old school. There's definitely some good memories in there, she said, but I'm ready to make new ones in here. Teacher's Closet to Help Schools Stay Stocked by Dan Medeiros. With only a few days left before teachers and students return to classrooms, the United Way of Greater Fall River has connected 11 local schools with sponsors to make sure teachers have what they need without dipping into their own pockets. This is the 6th year the United Way has promoted its Teacher's Closet initiative, raising money to help schools be stocked up with staples. In this year, the group tweaked the program to pair up a local school with a corporate sponsor to build a one-on-one relationship. Teachers are very giving and loving people, and when a kid is in need, they take from their pocket and they give to the kid, said UWGFR Executive Director Kim Smith. They do whatever it takes to make sure the kids have whatever they need. Patty Armstrong of the United Way said the group set its sights on adopting 8 local schools, 2 from Fall River and 6 from towns in the group's service area. They were chosen based on data from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to see which schools in each community were most in need, along with help from local school leadership. Thanks to an abundance of donations, the group exceeded its goal and created partnerships with 11 schools. Though other nonprofits have held drives to fill backpacks with supplies for kids, we're not one to duplicate effort, Smith said. We're all about convening and collaborating. Each school has its own corporate sponsor chipping in $1,000 to fill the gap between what the school system already supplies and what teachers and kids need. Grant or sponsorship funding that we receive beyond what was already pledged will get used to replenish items in the different teachers' closets throughout the year to ensure this initiative is a sustainable one, said Janine Poharelli of the United Way. The teacher's closet isn't necessarily a literal closet. Each school fills out an online wish list of items that can be bought as needs arise. But a display at the United Way's Bedford Street offices showed the wide variety of possibilities and needs, the sort of items that teachers frequently need on hand. These supplies often run out quickly or aren't available from their own school supply closets, leading them to buy them themselves. On its shelves were the usual pencils and notebooks, but also paper towels, cleaning wipes, hand sanitizer, flashcards, sensory items, granola bars, even fresh socks for needy kids. Westport Superintendent Thomas Aubin noted that, even in his town, teachers see their share of poverty. Smith said she knows teachers are providing a lot more than education. Partnered up for the school year are the following: Freetown Elementary School and K.R. Resendes Incorporated, Westall Elementary School, Fall River, and Corporate Image Apparel Incorporated, Resiliency Preparatory Academy, Fall River, and First Congregational Church, South Elementary School, Somerset, and Webster Bank, Gardiner Elementary School, Swansea, and St. Anne's Credit Union, Macomber Elementary School, Westport, and La France Hospitality, Westport Elementary School and Bank 5, Wilbur and McMahon Schools, Little Compton, and the United Way of Greater Fall River, Fort Barton Elementary School, Tiverton, and Clearview Corp, Laterno Elementary School, Fall River, and Bay Coast Bank, Atlantis Charter Lower School, Fall River, and Gold Medal Bakery. Research. Fed's actions spoke louder than words. By Howard Schneider. The Federal Reserve's credibility in the eyes of financial markets helped in its battle against inflation over the past 2 years. But it had to be earned afresh with interest rate hikes that backed up policymakers' verbose promises to restore price stability, according to new research presented at the Kansas City Fed's annual research conference in Jackson Hole. A strong perception in financial markets that a central bank is committed to inflation control can make monetary policy more effective, prompting markets to shift financial conditions faster and lowering inflation with a less serious hit to economic growth than would otherwise be the case. While investors came to believe that the U.S. Central Bank, under the leadership of Fed Chair Jerome Powell, was serious about defending its 2% inflation target, that belief only formed over time and after the officials began raising the policy interest rate in March 2022 and accelerated the rate hikes over that summer, the researchers found. Forecasters and markets were highly uncertain about the monetary policy rule prior to liftoff and learned about it from the Fed's rate hikes. Economists Michael Bauer from the San Francisco Fed, Carolyn Pfluger from the University of Chicago, and Adi Sundaram from the Harvard Business School found in their research. Substantial rate hikes were apparently necessary for perceptions to shift. The public did not fully understand the Fed's strategy and policy rule prior to liftoff. The research serves as a warning of sorts against central bankers putting too much weight on the power of talk therapy, or the ability to influence economic outcomes with words and promises alone. The Fed in recent years has been characterized by a surfeit of speeches and public comments by its officials, whether by the head of the central bank, other members of its presidentially appointed Board of Governors, or its 12 regional bank presidents, under the notion that more transparency is good for public accountability and makes policy more effective. Fed officials often noted that public belief in their commitment to the inflation target would help on its own to lower the pace of price increases, shorten the time it took for tighter monetary policy to have an impact, and lower inflation with less damage to the job market and other aspects of the real economy. The researchers found, however, that while the Fed under Powell eventually earned the benefit of public trust, it also wasn't a given. The research used survey data to quantify how professional forecasters perceived the Fed would respond to higher inflation, and found that even as prices began rising in 2021, the expected Fed response to inflation was near zero. While that could have been attributed to a number of factors, including a belief that inflation would ease on its own, the researchers concluded it was actually because forecasters weren't sure how the central bank would react. For future policymakers, the researchers said, the conclusion is clear. Actions speak louder than words. Downtown New Bedford Building Going from Hamburgers to Housing by Frank Mulligan. A downtown building that last housed a craft burger restaurant is being converted into apartments. The close to $8 million rehabilitation project to develop 19 apartments at 89 North Water Street is scheduled to begin construction this fall and be completed next fall. The 4-story brick building at the corner of Elm Street, which was previously the home of D&B Burgers, was purchased by Franklin Hospitality Corporation for $1.7 million in June 2023. The building has been vacant for a few years. The development will be known as Elmwater Landing. Franklin Hospitality Corp. is closely affiliated with LaFrance Hospitality of Westport, a 3-generation family business started in 1955 with a portfolio that includes 14 hotels, 4 restaurants, 5 function facilities, and a catering company. Its properties include Fairfield Inn & Suites by Marriott New Bedford, Town Place Suites by Marriott Fall River Westport, Town Place Suites by Marriott Wareham, Merrill's on the Waterfront, and White's of Westport. Elmwater Landing will feature 15 one-bedroom apartments and 4 two-bedroom apartments, said Jeff Pinault, LaFrance Hospitality Chief Financial Officer. They will be rented at market rates. The one-bedroom units would rent for an estimated $1,800 per month, according to the City Tax Increment Financing Board. A two-bedroom unit's rent was estimated at $2,300. Sean LaFrance Hospitality Director of Facilities, said Elmwater Landing would be similar to the residential component of the company's 18 and Union project on Lower Union Street, where 28 apartments are being developed. It was recently completed. We recently completed a project on Union Street where we rehabbed 3 historically significant buildings, the National Club and the Beckman Building, to 28 residential units, LaFrance said during a recent meeting with the City Council's Ordinance Committee. The Council subsequently approved a tax increment exemption agreement, supported by Mayor John Mitchell, with Franklin Hospitality Corporation. That will reduce the company's taxes by a total of $146,739 over the 10-year agreement period. The development will still generate over $400,000 in taxes for the city over that 10-year period, and $60,000 per year after the agreement period. Joshua Amaral, director of the City Office of Housing and Community Development, said it was a relatively marginal sum for the developer. However, the tax agreement's approval qualifies the developer to apply for state tax credits that support housing development. We want to get them the agreement approval so they can go and seek those tax credits to make their financing work for this project, Amaral said during the meeting with city councilors. It's a relatively expensive building to renovate, he said, adding it will cost about $440,000 per unit. To do that development requires some assistance, and we don't think it's a project that works without it. We've worked hand in hand with them to prepare this agreement to move their project forward, Amaral told councilors. Half of the nearby 18 and Union Project's 28 apartments are already rented, though marketing efforts are just starting up, LaFrance said. Some sidewalk and related work around the $15 million project site is still being completed, he added. The units are split between 1 and 2 bedrooms and include 5 affordable housing units. The Beckman Building, which includes 2 structures, has 26 units. 2 additional units will be offered on the top floor of the National Club, the former bar at 24 Union Street, which is being rehabilitated into an upscale Mexican restaurant by Servedwell Hospitality under lease to LaFrance Hospitality. Servedwell's venues include the Black Whale, Cisco, and Sail Loft. Served-Well owner Steve Silverstein said work on the new restaurant, which will also be called the National Club, will begin in a few weeks. It's scheduled to be completed in spring 2025, Silverstein said. Franklin Hospitality Corporation also bought the building at 38 Bethel Street, which abuts the rear of 89 North Water Street, for $1,975,000 on January 30th. It was built in 1880 and is the site of the New Bedford Fishing Heritage Center and another half-dozen tenants. LaFrance said there were no changes planned in that building's current use. Trump Struggles to Keep Media Spotlight by Nathan Lane. Donald Trump, touting plans on taxes and health, tried on Friday to turn the page on a week in which he was overshadowed by Vice President Kamala Harris, and struggled to focus on policy issues instead of personal attacks on his opponent in the U.S. presidential race. From a lectern at a Mexican restaurant in Las Vegas, the Republican candidate spoke about his plan to eliminate taxes on tips to waiters and other service employees. He discussed his campaign's efforts to court Hispanic voters in Nevada, a swing state that could help determine the November 5th election, and nationwide. The tax proposal, a pillar of Trump's economic agenda, is the kind of issue his advisors have been pressing him to focus on, rather than his frequent personal attacks against Harris, warning they could turn off the moderate voters he needs to win. At an event in Arizona later, the former president repeated his tax pledge, while promising to set up a commission to investigate presidential assassination attempts. He also said he would install a panel to investigate an increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases. Both proposals are apparent concessions to independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., who endorsed Trump at the event after dropping out of the race. Trump's comments come one day after Harris accepted the Democratic Party's presidential nomination with a muscular speech that laid down broad foreign policy principles and sharp contrasts with Trump, with 11 weeks left until Election Day. Trump sought to counter-program the four-day convention with events of his own around the country, hoping to steal some media attention from Harris. However, his speeches on foreign policy, the economy, and crime did little to dislodge the spotlight from Harris and received little attention, a stunning turnaround for a politician used to dominating headlines. The Republican and his aides hope Thursday's boisterous convention finale marks the end of the honeymoon period for Harris, who emerged as the Democratic candidate little more than a month ago, after President Joe Biden exited the race and endorsed her. During Harris's acceptance speech in Chicago, Trump attacked her with dozens of posts on his Truth Social platform, calling her a liar, a Marxist, and Comrade Kamala Harris. One post simply asked, "Is she talking about me?" William Rosenberg, a political science professor at Drexel University, said Trump's personal attacks on Harris underscored his frustration with having to face a biracial woman, a task complicated by his history of making racist and sexist remarks. "His anger and his words speak volumes," Rosenberg said. "He's navigating a path which is full of problems for him." Harris has surged in the polls since entering the race, with polling aggregator website 538 putting her ahead of Trump in 6 of 7 swing states. She is also outperforming her Republican opponent in fundraising. Her campaign told the Federal Election Commission last week that it raised $204 million last month, compared with $48 million reported to the body by Trump's main fundraising group. One question still to be answered is whether Harris will also outpace Trump on the trail in the coming weeks. Biden, 81, made relatively few campaign stops, easing pressure on Trump to travel more around the country, That may now change with the nomination of Harris, 59. Trump, 78, will travel to Detroit on Monday to address a conference of the National Guard Association of the United States and is scheduled to give a speech at a conservative women's group's annual summit in Washington on Friday. Campaign spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said Trump would hold at least one additional campaign stop between those two events, without providing details. The Harris campaign has not yet released details of her appearances for next week. Leavitt blamed the media for focusing their stories on Trump's personal attacks, which she said made up a fraction of his otherwise policy-heavy rallies and speeches. At a speech event on Wednesday in Asheboro, North Carolina, billed as one on national security, Trump said he had rejected the recommendations of his advisors to focus on policy, and he insulted Harris and other Democrats in personal terms. He again recounted those conversations with advisors at the rally in Arizona on Friday. My geniuses, they get paid a fortune. Actually, not that much. But I call up my people, I say, they're knocking the hell out of me, and you say I shouldn't get personal. I have to get personal, don't I? Trump said to applause. An outside advisor to Trump told Reuters on condition of anonymity that several advisors had told the former president that a continued focus on insults rather than policy could doom his chances in November. Republican strategist Doug Hay said Trump could still win the race, which he predicted would be close. But to do that, he should focus on inflation, illegal immigration, and other issues that polling show many voters give him higher marks on. Starliner astronauts to return to Earth next year, by Joey Roulette. Two NASA astronauts who flew to the International Space Station in June aboard Boeing's faulty Starliner capsule will need to return to Earth on a SpaceX vehicle early next year, NASA Chief Bill Nelson said on Saturday, deeming issues with Starliner's propulsion system too risky to carry its first crew home. The agency's decision, tapping Boeing's top space rival to return the astronauts, is one of NASA's most consequential in years. Boeing had hoped its Starliner test mission would redeem the troubled program after years of development problems and over $1.6 billion in budget overruns since 2016. Nelson, speaking with reporters at a news conference in Houston, said he discussed the agency's decision with Boeing's new CEO, Kelly Ortberg. He expressed to me an intention that they will continue to work the problems once Starliner is back safely, Nelson said of Ortberg. Boeing is also struggling with quality issues on production of commercial planes, its most important products. Veteran NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, both former military test pilots, became the first crew to ride Starliner on June 5th when they were launched to the ISS for what was expected to be an 8-day test mission. But Starliner's propulsion system suffered a series of glitches beginning in the first 24 hours of its flight to the ISS, triggering months of cascading delays. 5 of its 28 thrusters failed, and it sprang several leaks of helium, which is used to pressurize the thrusters. In a rare reshuffling of NASA's astronaut operations, the 2 astronauts are now expected to return in February 2025 on a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft due to launch next month as part of a routine astronaut rotation mission. 2 of the Crew Dragon's 4 astronaut seats will be kept empty for Wilmore and Williams. Starliner will undock from the ISS without a crew in early September, NASA said in a statement. The spacecraft will attempt to return to Earth autonomously, so it will not achieve its objective of having a crew present and in control for the return trip. I know this is not the decision we had hoped for, but we stand ready to carry out the actions necessary to support NASA's decision, Boeing Starliner chief Mark Nappy said in an email to company employees. Boeing struggled for years to develop Starliner, a gumdrop-shaped capsule designed to compete with Crew Dragon as a second U.S. option for sending astronaut crews to and from Earth's orbit. Starliner failed a 2019 test to launch to the ISS uncrewed, but mostly succeeded in a 2022 do-over attempt where it also encountered thruster problems. Its June mission, with its first crew, was required before NASA can certify the capsule for routine flights, but now Starliner's crew certification path has been upended. NASA's decision and Starliner's now uncertain path to certification will add to the crises faced by Ortberg, who started this month with the goal to rebuild the plane maker's reputation after a door panel dramatically blew off a 737 MAX passenger jet in mid-air in January. We've reached the halfway point of our program, and regular listeners are aware that at this stage of our broadcast we move to the obituaries. However, there are no obituaries in today's edition. Missile Exchange Inflames Mideast Tensions by Maytal Angel and Maya Gabelli. Hezbollah launched hundreds of rockets and drones at Israel early on Sunday, as Israel's military said it struck Lebanon with around 100 jets to thwart a bigger attack, in one of the biggest clashes in more than 10 months of border warfare. Missiles were visible curling up through the dawn sky, dark vapor trails behind them, as an air raid siren sounded in Israel, and a distant blast lit the horizon, while smoke rose over houses in Qaim in southern Lebanon. 3 deaths were confirmed in Lebanon and none in Israel, where damage appeared to be limited. Hezbollah indicated it was not planning further strikes yet. Israel's foreign minister said the country did not seek a full-scale war. Any major escalation in the fighting, which began in parallel with the war in Gaza, risks morphing into a regional conflagration, drawing in Hezbollah's backer, Iran, and Israel's main ally, the United States. Sunday's strikes came as negotiators were meeting in Cairo in a last-ditch effort to conclude a halt to the fighting in Gaza. The Iran-backed Lebanese group said it had fired 320 Katyusha rockets toward Israel, and hit 11 military targets in what it called the first phase of its retaliation for Israel's assassination of Fuad Shukr, a senior commander, last month. Israel's military said it had foiled a much larger attack with preemptive airstrikes after assessing that Hezbollah was preparing to launch the barrage, using 100 jets to strike more than 40 Hezbollah launch sites in southern Lebanon. The strikes destroyed thousands of launcher barrels, aimed mostly at northern Israel, but also targeting some central areas, Israel's military said. Hezbollah dismissed Israel's statement that the group's attack had been foiled with preemptive strikes, saying it had been able to launch its drones as planned, and that the rest of its response to Shukr's killing would take some time. Expectations of an escalation had risen since a missile strike in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights last month killed 12 youngsters, and the Israeli military assassinated Shukr in Beirut in response. Israel's Security Cabinet met at 7 a.m., and the full cabinet was scheduled to meet on Sunday afternoon. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant declared a state of emergency, and Foreign Minister Israel Katz said Israel would respond to developments on the ground, but did not seek a full-scale war. We are determined to do everything possible to defend our country, to return the residents of the North safely to their homes, and to continue to uphold a simple rule. Whoever harms us, we harm him, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a statement. Lebanon's caretaker, Prime Minister Najib Mikati, met cabinet ministers at a session of the National Emergency Committee. Hezbollah leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah was set to speak on television later Sunday, the group said. Flights to and from Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv were suspended for around 90 minutes. Some flights to and from Beirut were halted, stranding passengers. "I just want to get out of here by any means possible," said Rana Sadeh, a Lebanese woman living in New Jersey. In northern Israel, warning sirens sounded and multiple explosions were heard around several areas as Israel's Iron Dome aerial defense system shot down rockets coming from southern Lebanon. The ambulance service went on high alert across the country and said there were no immediate reports of casualties. The Israeli military told people to limit gatherings, a restriction it later lifted, and said people could go to work if they could reach air raid shelters quickly. Israeli media said the barrage hitting northern areas had damaged houses. A security source in Lebanon said at least 40 Israeli strikes had hit various towns in the country's south in one of the densest bombardments since hostilities began in October. One of the strikes on the town of Qiyam killed a fighter from the Hezbollah-allied Shiite group Amal, two security sources told Reuters. Amal later announced his death. An Israeli strike on Al-Tiri killed 2 other people, according to a security source and a medical source. It was not immediately clear if they were fighters or civilians. A resident of the southern Lebanese town of Zibquen told Reuters he had awakened to the sound of planes and the loud explosions of rockets, even before the dawn prayer. It felt like the apocalypse. President Joe Biden was following events closely, the White House said. At his direction, senior U.S. officials have been communicating continuously with their Israeli counterparts. We will keep supporting Israel's right to defend itself, and we will keep working for regional stability, National Security Council spokesperson Sean Savet said. The UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon and the UN Special Coordinator's office in the country called on all sides to cease fire, calling the developments worrying. Egypt, one of the mediators in Gaza ceasefire talks, warned against the dangers of a new war front opening in Lebanon. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi group congratulated its ally Hezbollah on what it called a great and brave attack on Israel. Hezbollah fired missiles at Israel immediately after the October 7th attacks by Hamas gunmen on Israel. Hezbollah and Israel have been exchanging fire constantly ever since, while avoiding a major escalation as war rages in Gaza to the south. That precarious balance appeared to shift after the strike in the Golan Heights, for which Hezbollah denied responsibility, and the subsequent assassination of Shukr, one of Hezbollah's most senior military commanders. Shukr's death in an airstrike was quickly followed by the assassination of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, which led to vows of reprisal against Israel by Iran. Expect record-breaking Labor Day flight numbers, by Kathleen Wong. As summer travel comes to a close with Labor Day weekend, flyers should prepare for crowded airports and long lines. In fact, it may be the busiest Labor Day travel period on record, according to the Transportation Security Administration. Over 17 million passengers are expected to hit the skies for the long weekend, which TSA is counting as August 29th through September 4th. Saturday is expected to be the holiday weekend's peak travel day, with 2.86 million passengers projected to pass through TSA. People are traveling more than ever this summer, and TSA, along with our airline and airport partners, stand ready to close the busiest summer travel period on record during this upcoming Labor Day weekend, TSA Administrator David Pekoske said in a statement. The nation's airports will likely be very busy. This Labor Day weekend is expected to have 8.5% more travelers than last year's, so pack your patience, unless you have TSA pre-check. Those who have flown recently likely already know this, as this summer season has been incredibly busy for security checkpoints. The top 10 heaviest air travel days of the entire year happened during the summer, and TSA broke records during the two other major holiday weekends, Memorial Day and the 4th of July. In fact, TSA reached a new milestone on July 7th, screening more than 3 million people in a single day, the agency said in a statement. Choosing to drive might not help. USA Today previously reported that travel via all modalities will be heavy during the final long weekend of summer, with domestic travel up by 9% from last year, according to AAA. Tips for a speedy security checkpoint. Arrive early, even if your flight is domestic. TSA recommends you get to the airport 2 hours before your flight to give yourself enough time to get to the gate. For international flights, 3 hours should do. Have your stuff properly packed. Save precious time by making sure your liquids are the right amounts, 3.4 ounces, and kept in a clear plastic bag. Breast milk, powdered formula, sippy cups, or liquid or cream medication should be separated and placed in their own bin at security. It's also recommended that medicine be kept in its original marked container. Free at-home COVID tests will be available this fall. By Adriana Rodriguez. Once again, the federal government will provide free COVID-19 test kits to people across the U.S. to prepare for the respiratory virus season during the fall and winter months, health officials announced Friday. The site covidtest.gov will begin taking orders in late September, said Dawn O'Connell, Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Americans can order up to 4 tests per household to be sent directly to their homes. Don't forget to use these free tests when you're concerned that you or your loved one may have COVID, O'Connell said. They will do no one any good sitting in your medicine cabinet. She said the tests will be able to detect the dominant variants that are currently circulating. As of Friday, the subvariant KP3.1.1 made up nearly 37% of COVID-19 cases in the U.S., and KP.3 made up over 16%, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This is the 7th time in the past 3 years the administration has provided free test kits to Americans, O'Connell said. About 900 million home tests have been distributed through the program in partnership with the U.S. Postal Service. The announcement comes a day after the Food and Drug Administration approved an updated COVID-19 vaccine formulation from Pfizer and Moderna. Shots are expected to arrive at distribution sites across the country in the coming days. The CDC recommends this year's doses for everyone 6 months and older. They will target the JN1 subvariant KP2. To prepare for the season, the CDC will also distribute $62 million in unused vaccine contract money to local and state health departments to provide updated vaccines to people who are uninsured and underinsured, an agency spokesperson said. The funding is likely aimed at helping to cover the loss of the $1.1 billion Bridge Access Program, which ends August 31st. That program allowed uninsured and underinsured people in the U.S. to get free COVID-19 vaccines and provided 1.5 million people with shots after it launched last September. Doctor charged in death of Perry returning to work, attorney says. One of two doctors charged in the October death of Matthew Perry is heading back to work. Dr. Salvador Plasencia, who operates Malibu Canyon Urgent Care in Calabasas, California, was set to return to his practice this past week, his attorney Stephen Sachs confirmed in an email to USA Today. Sachs confirmed that Plasencia must inform patients of his involvement in the ongoing criminal case in the death of Perry from the acute effects of ketamine. Ketamine is an anesthetic drug, popularized from use at parties, but is also used medically in treatment for PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Perry was reportedly receiving treatment for the latter prior to his death. USA Today has reached out to prosecutors at the Department of Justice and Perry's former representatives for comment. Plasencia is still permitted to prescribe patients non-controlled drugs, such as antibiotics, Sachs confirmed. The Southern California-based physician, who is listed as co-conspirator 1 in court documents, was one of two doctors charged in connection with the Friends star's death, along with 3 additional defendants. In the plea agreement documents for Perry's live-in personal assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, who was also charged in connection to his death, prosecutors alleged Plasencia taught this Perry staffer how to administer ketamine to the actor. The documents allege Plasencia met with Iwamasa at least 7 times to sell the assistant ketamine. 15 Fall River defensive players to keep an eye on, by Steven Sanchez. The high school preseason is underway for the Herald News football teams. All 5 Fall River area teams, Atlantis Charter Westport, Case, Diamond, Durfee, and Somerset Berkeley, will look toward their leaders on the defensive end. These guys are the heart and soul of the team, whether banging heads deep inside line play or just defending the opponent's top receiver. Here are the top 15 returning players we have our eyes on to make an impact defensively. Marvin's Antoine, Atlantis Charter Westport. Antoine's natural skills on the football make him dynamic on the defensive end for the Tritons. The junior defensive back is a ball hawk on defense and has the ability to score on every play with the ball in his hands. Dason Rooks, Atlantis Charter Westport. Rooks will be starting his 3rd straight year, disrupting offenses. The Tritons' junior defensive tackle sets the tone on defense in the run game and pass attack. Rooks, a second-team Herald News All-Scholastic, is one of the best in the area at his position. Colin Viveiros, Atlantis Charter Westport. Viveiros is another versatile player for the Tritons this season. The junior defensive back has athletic ability and speed which separates him from defense. Viveiros, a first-team Herald News All-Scholastic, secures everything with his sure hands. Ben Fortier, Joseph Case. Fortier is one of the toughest defenders on the field for the Cardinals. The senior defensive end creates havoc in the run game and is a solid pass rusher. Fortier also has a motor on defense that doesn't quit. Pat Grinrod, Joseph Case. Grinrod brings leadership and toughness to the Cardinals' defense. The senior linebacker is entering his 3rd straight varsity season and will look to go out with a bang. Lucas Saltmarsh, Joseph Case. Saltmarsh was a standout last season for the Cardinals and was one of their better tacklers on defense. The senior defensive end collected 54 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and had 6 sacks in 2023. Saltmarsh, a Herald News first-team All-Scholastic, has experience and playmaking ability. Giovanni Carvalho, Diamond. Carvalho is entering his 3rd straight varsity season for the Bengals. The junior defensive end will look to set the edge on the running game while turning up the heat on the quarterback. Head coach Luke Barry said Carvalho has had an excellent camp so far. Peyton or Massey by Diamond. Massey is one of the up-and-coming players for the Bengals this season. The sophomore cornerback is quick and a good defender. Massey has a lot of upside in his game. Logan Uwan, Diamond. Uwan is Mr. Everything on both offense and defense for the Bengals. The 6'3" junior safety is athletic and has good hands in the backfield. Alvin Gaston, Durfee. Gaston was one of the Hilltoppers' top defenders last season. The junior defensive back was named a Southeast Conference All-Star. Gaston, a second-team Herald News All-Scholastic, led Durfee in interceptions with 5. Caden Kiev, Durfee. Kiev was named a Southeast Conference All-Star at his defensive position for the Hilltoppers. The senior safety is 3-year starter and athletic. He can cover the whole field defensively. Ben Sherry, Durfee. Sherry returns for his second year at defensive back, where he made a difference for the Hilltoppers in 2023. The senior defensive back leads by example and is very talented, shutting down the opponent's top receiver. Sherry, a Herald News second-team All-Scholastic, was a Southeast Conference All-Star. Finn Bjork, Somerset Berkeley. Bjork had a breakout season for the South Coast Conference Blue co-champion Raiders in 2023. The senior defensive end led SBR in sacks with 8, had 56 tackles, and blocked 2 punt attempts. Bjork is a Herald News All-Scholastic First Team and SEC League All-Star. Brendan McDonald, Somerset Berkeley. McDonald had a monster season defensively for the South Coast Conference Blue co-champion Raiders in 2023. The senior cornerback recorded a team-leading 6 interceptions and returned a pair of touchdowns. McDonald, a Herald News All-Scholastic First Team and SEC All-Star, covers the opponent's top receiver. Hayden Teasdale, Somerset Berkeley. Teasdale was a big run stopper on the defensive side of the ball for the South Coast Conference Blue co-champion Raiders in 2023. The SBR senior defensive lineman can make plays in the run and pass game. Burton wins at Daytona for first Cup triumph. On a wild Saturday night, lame duck driver Harrison Burton had a point to prove at one of NASCAR's most treacherous superspeedways. Burton passed 2-time Cup Series champion Kyle Busch on the final overtime lap at Daytona International Speedway, earning his first career victory in the Cup Series Coke Zero Sugar 400 in Daytona Beach, Florida. After side-by-side leaders Austin Cindric and Josh Berry wrecked with 2 laps to go, with Berry's number 4 Ford going airborne on the backstretch, for the 7th caution, Burton scored the legendary Wood brothers their 100th career win by passing Busch on the backstretch, blocking his number 8 off turn 4 and edging him by 0.047 seconds. It was Burton's first win in 98 Cup starts. It was announced recently that the 23-year-old son of former driver Jeff Burton will not return to the iconic number 21 in 2025. Obviously, I got fired from this job, and I wanted to do everything for the Wood brothers that I could. They've given me an amazing opportunity in life, said Burton, who had to wait for NASCAR to rule that he had not committed an infraction by going below the double yellow line coming to the checkers. To get them 100 on the way out is amazing. We're in the playoffs now. Let's go to Darlington and see what happens. He became the 3rd driver in the Burton family to win at Daytona, joining his father, 2000, and uncle, Ward, 2002. The Wood brothers' most recent win was on July 11, 2017, with driver Ryan Blaney at Pocono. Winless Busch's best 2024 finish wasn't good enough. We got out of turn 2, and somehow the bottom lane broke up and broke all of our momentum. The top lane with Burton just rolled, Busch said of the number 21 Ford's last lap pass. Christopher Bell, Cody Ware, and Ty Gibbs rounded out the top 5 in the 66th running of the summer race. After posting the organization's first time sweeping the top 2 qualifying spots, Front Row Motorsports' Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland led the field to the green for the 160-lap race. In addition to the front row drivers, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Barry William Bryan, and Cindric took turns in front before Barry led late in the 35-lap Stage 1. Chris Boucher, last year's 400 winner, made a strong push and shoved Barry out front on the final lap, and Barry hung on around the 2.5-mile superspeedway for his first segment win. After pit service, Daniel Suarez's number 99 Trackhouse Racing Chevrolet was engulfed in flames. That sent the Mexican driver back to the pits, where he climbed out to safety while the team inspected melted pieces of his Camaro. At least 18 cars were involved in the first of 2 Stage 2 wrecks on lap 60, where Corey LaJoie, Noah Gragson, and Ross Chastain triggered the race's biggest crash on the famous super stretch. 2 incidents occurred simultaneously when Eric Jones's number 43 lost a tire at the same time Shane Van Gisbergen's number 16 engine expired, with the explosive motor sending smoke billowing above the flat backstretch. Shortly after, as the Fords flexed their muscle, Logano beat Team Penske teammate Ryan Blaney to claim the second segment, with Keselowski in third. With 21 laps left and pit stops about to start, John Hunter Nemechek's number 42 spun after contact with Justin Haley in the number 51 Ford. McDowell's number 34 was sent airborne in turn 1 after a push from Cindric in the night's biggest wreck, a 14-car melee, with 9 laps to go. Report: Dolphins to release veteran quarterback Mike White. The Dolphins plan to release veteran quarterback Mike White, leaving Skylar Thompson as the backup to Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Herald reported Sunday. The team also is releasing tight end Jody Fortson, per the report. Both White and Thompson played Friday night in the Dolphins' preseason finale against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a 24-12 loss, with Thompson seeing more reps. White was 5 for 9 passing for 37 yards and took a sack. Thompson completed 19 of 27 passes for 190 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. White, 29, was a 5th-round draft pick of the Dallas Cowboys in 2018 and spent 2 seasons with the New York Jets, 2021 through 22, and last season with the Dolphins. In 14 appearances, White has started 7 games with a 2-5 record, completing 62.6% of his career passes for 2,219 yards with 9 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. White had 1 year remaining on the 2-year, $8 million contract he signed last year. Fortson, 28, played in 19 games, 1 start, with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2021 through 22, catching 14 passes for 155 yards with 4 touchdowns. He spent the 2023 season on injured reserve and signed with the Dolphins in May. And that's all I have time for. This is your reader, Robert Orm, saying thanks for listening.